So back to the site. First things first, as ever, we like to look at the design of the site, and William Hill have worked pretty hard over the years to make it to what it is now. It used to be quite dated. The design's pretty clean. You know, it does feel as though there's a lot of information on screen. There's a lot going on in our opinion. The text is a little small as well. If you were on a smaller laptop screen, we think you'd maybe struggle a little bit to see this unless you blew it up. But as we say, there's a lot of information, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. They're very much into their blogging. They like giving out tips, things like that. We'll talk about later in the review. First thing I want to talk about is their live streaming. You know, when we get into the features section, we're always pleased to see a bookmaker that provides live streaming. It seems to be such an easy crossover between sports betting and streaming. They've got all UK racing, Irish racing. You do have to place a minimum of £1 bet on the race. It qualifies you to watch the action for that race. They've got William Hill Radio, which is free. They also include an absolute ton of football games. Granted, they are from a bit more sort of the smaller markets outside of England, definitely. But you know, there's still some big games there. I mean, you see later on, this is a Friday night. Paris Saint-Germain are playing here. That's a pretty big game. Freiburg versus Bremen in Germany. That's a pretty big game. As I say, as you work through though, the games don't just end at football. You got snooker, you got tennis, ice hockey, darts, basketball, cricket. You know, there's so many sports to choose from, which is a really good addition. New feature to the site is something called Tip Advisor. This feels very much as though it's in a beta testing at the minute. It doesn't quite feel as polished as it could do, but we like the concept. Basically, it's a blog for people to post up their own tips on William Hill. They can say, we fancy this horse. So if you see that this feature here, this guy fancies the horse in the Epsom Derby on the 7th of June, odds of 50 to 1, and he puts a little explanation of why he likes it. Take them with a pinch of salt. You know, they're good for sort of, if you have an idea of what you want to bet on, that's fine, and then go and see what other guys are offering. One thing we do like is the fact that you can see people who are actually winners. You know, people are actually putting winning tips in. Obviously, William Hill, you have to put it into William Hill's system, so it does track the tips as well. Nice little feature, and you take it for what it is. Downside to the whole site is that they're not the most competitive when it comes to odds. You know, they're okay, they're fine. You know, they're about sort of middle of the road. They'll be in the top 10 definitely for each market, but they rarely come out on top in terms of if you compared it to the likes of BetVictor or Bet365, who worked really hard to get to the top of the game. You know, these guys aren't quite there. Finally, we just want to mention that another interesting feature that they've added is the tip section. Now, the tip section comes from guys from across the industry. It's really well thought out. There's loads of information. You know, before putting a bet on, you need to go and have a look at this section just to see what the other guys are talking about. Even if you don't follow the tips and just pick up the stats,